Excellent. Good morning, folks. Can you all hear me? That's my first question. Can you hear me? And please welcome, welcome, welcome. This is such a joy for me to have people here who are here to listen to what I have to say. Or what I've learned is more important, what I'm going to be sharing with you today. If you look at the cover of the PowerPoint that we're going to be building off of, it says, Developing the Art of Caring for Self in Troubled Times. Hi, Carol. If you see, there's one of my favorite diagrams. It's a diagram of the art and science of coaching recovery as I've experienced it over the last, 8 or 9 years that I've been doing Recovery Coach Academy. Okay. Brian's having some problems with audio, Shanae. Can we help him? Is there an audio button that you're missing? I'm not sure on your end. I know I certainly have to turn my audio on, Brian. So I'm not sure, but clearly let me know. Okay. Well, yeah. Excellent. Again, this diagram for me really captures what we make an effort to do through these webinars. Through the Recovery Coach Academy, you learn about active listening, spectrum of attitudes, what is recovery, what is a recovery coach, the stages of recovery, the stages of change, cultural responsiveness, motivational questioning, self-care, which is bolded today because that's our focus, recovery capital planning, and several skills and strategies, i.e. the science of supporting recovery. For me and Phil, this has come as a result of just Recovery Coach Academy after Recovery Coach Academy, but more importantly, highlighting what you learn in Recovery Coach Academy. If you see on that same left-hand column where I just listed the different elements of the work of Recovery Coach Academy, that's the science. And the science offers us an opportunity to think about what to do. And today we're going to think about and talk about what to do in the realm of self-care. And I'm going to be offering some information that's really relative to my own experiences, because what we're really talking about is how do we care for ourselves in challenging times. And I best teach what I most need to learn, no doubt about it. And I've gone through some challenging times, and I'm going to share with you as a part of this. But I also want you to think about, as we talk about this science of self-care, developing the art of taking care of ourselves, focusing on that right-hand circle, which is you developing your art. How are you going to do this? I'm not going to give you a whole lot of answers or solutions. What I'm going to give you more of is an opportunity to think about things in a way you may not have thought about them, motivational interviewing question types, and have you think about, okay, how am I going to get this done? Because this is a critical part of what you do. If you look at the science part, which is what to do, if you look at the art, which is how to do it, there's that overlap of those two circles, which is wonder. I think the most potent opportunity you have to benefit from this process that we're offering you today is wonder. How am I going to make this happen? How am I going to do this for myself? Because in doing it for myself, i.e. caring for myself in challenging times, I'm going to do a better job of helping people that I help to do it as well. This is such a learning, doing, teaching proposition. And again, when I talk about caring for myself in challenging times, as you will see, it's been a lot of work put into it. So with that in mind, as we move forward, if questions come up, feel free to type them. Feel free to interact as you choose. I'll look at those. There'll be times when I'll just pause and ask for some responses from you. But more importantly, throughout the course of this webinar, wonder. Be curious. Be honest with yourself about this information. So I think it's critical to our process. Let's move to the next slide. The origin of this webinar, I thought I wanted to share with you because it's really cute. I got an email from Stacy on January 11th. She said, "Good morning, Art. I'm inquiring about you might be able to do the next webinar. The topic I'm thinking about is self-care." This is how we tend to interchange when we think about the webinaring. We offer a webinar, Burnout or Self-Care back in 2015, so it might be a good time to revisit and stress the importance of self-care for recovery coaches, especially in a time when our environment is so stressful, politically, the Me Too movement, etc. And then she asked for thoughts. Clearly for me, my response was, great topic, because I think it's important that we take care of ourselves as we make an honest effort to take care of others. Whenever we mention Recovery Coach Academy, that an occupational hazard of those who take care of others is that we don't take as good a care of ourselves. And people nod. I really wonder how people walk away and how they address that issue. You know, a critical part of the science of coaching recovery is you developing your own art of taking care of yourself. Interestingly enough, two words that Stacy used they're going to be a big part of this particular webinar. She says, our environment is so stressful. You know, when she talked about self-care, I always convert that into stress care. You know, and I think rightfully so, because so much in my own situation, so much of what I need to take care of is me in the midst of my stress. Great. So that's how this topic came about. CCAR Recovery Coach Fundamental Tools. Again, a very simplistic, simple way of capturing what we do and how we do it. This is the basis of the work. Whenever I'm sitting with people who I'm helping, this is in my head. And folks, believe me, this is in my head. I got Benjamin typing. Can you hear Benjamin? The Recovery Coach Academy School, actively listening, asking good questions, and discovering and managing our own stuff. Treating people as resources is a critical part of this process. Wow. Yes. You know what, Benjamin? When I think about leadership, I think about I read an article from the Harvard Business Review blog, and they talked about, are you leading your life or are you living your life? And when I think about leadership, I think each and every one of us has an opportunity to find a way to lead our lives. I think the greatest opportunity we have to lead our lives and to help others as leaders is to lead our lives and share what we've learned. So much when I think about leadership, I think has to be in the same position that coaches are in. Listen, ask questions, and manage your stuff. Maybe your opportunity is to take some of these thoughts about self-care back to leadership and help them to appreciate that. And you'll see that they have an important opportunity to affect the environments in which people are working. And if they're not taking care of themselves, are they really offering the best that they can offer? Leadership, self-care, I think go hand in hand. If we lead our lives well, if we help others to lead their lives well, I think we are practicing self-care as leaders. So I think we'll talk more about that. Thanks for putting that in the middle of this. So if we've got this Recovery Coach Academy school that many of you are familiar with, I'm going to add a piece to it. And with this piece for this webinar speaks to developing the art of discovering and managing yourself. Replace the word stuff with yourself, and you can see how important this work, that middle leg of the stool, becomes. Discovering and managing my stuff is me managing my stress, my fear, my pain, myself in the midst of me helping others. So let's call it what it is. We're actively listening, we're asking good questions, and I think we have an ethical responsibility to discover and manage ourselves and through self-care in order to be the best helpers and leaders of a process that we can be. Self-cares. Normally here I offer learning objectives or bullets towards that, and I hope these questions will serve the same purpose. Again, when Stacy raised this issue, and again, folks, I've lived with this issue for 30-odd years. In my humble efforts to help over the last 38 years, times have been very challenging. And again, you'll get a sense of what that has been. And clearly, in my offering my story, I hope it opens you up to appreciate what your challenges have been as you've done this wonderful work. So when you think about self-cares, and when you think about the learning questions and opportunities that I hope this webinar offers us, first is, what is self-care? How do you describe self-care? What are the elements and the activities and the opportunities and the concept of self-care, without saying taking care of self? You know, what are the elements of self-care that come to play when you think about this concept of self-care? Again, going 20,000 miles above it, let's look down on it. I appreciate the fact that an occupational hazard of taking care of others is not taking care of myself as well. What goes on in that process that puts me in that position where I know self-care is critical to my process? I know it's something I need to learn so I can share it with others, and yet many times I just don't do it well or well enough. And I think we want to think about that. How do you describe and experience the environments in which you practice self-care? This is a different question. How do you describe and how do you experience the environments in which you practice self-care? The key being environments. Much like when we talk about culture, there are cultures that we are all a part of, we all engage in. And we all engage in environments, especially as we're helping others, especially as we're taking care of ourselves, within the environments in which we're making this honest effort to take care of ourselves, and also witnessing the efforts of people we help to take care of themselves. How are we experiencing those environments? Are those environments open and nurturing? Or are those environments fear-based or closed or limiting or restrictive? And do we pay attention to that, or do we just sort of ignore it? Again, how would you describe your experience in environments in which you practice self-care? I'm broadening the concept of self-care. How well do you practice self-care in environments or with people that challenge, stress, energize, deflate, frustrate, or anger you? How well do you practice self-care in challenging situations that might be stressful, energizing, deflating, frustrating, or angering? How do you practice it when there are limitations within the environments that you're trying to practice? And another point that we're going to constantly focus in on are, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? And what are your threats in practicing self-care in challenging or stressful environments? So much of my role as a caretaker is to pay attention to what has heart and meaning for the people that I'm making an honest effort to help. But over time, I've learned that if I don't pay attention to what has heart and meaning for my own self as I help other people, I can burn out, I can get lost, I can become complacent, or I can be self-doubting. So when I think about what are your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and your threats in practicing self-care, if you're not familiar, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the acronym is SWOT. And the SWOT comes from strategic planning. Strategic planning is usually done in organizations and companies in order to find out where they're going and figure out ways how to get there. I'm going to offer you an opportunity to think about strategically planning self-care and paying attention to its heart and meaning for you as you think about self-care. And folks, if you don't plan it, if you don't strategize it, we don't do it, do we? I mean, think of how much emphasis we put on plans with recoveries, and yet do we have similar plans for ourselves? I think one of the first things that I ask a person of recovery to do is to create a vision of where they want to go, so that they have a clear sense of what that might be. I think strategic planning helps create a vision of where one might want to go, but it takes work. So SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a strategic planning tool. It's the science of strategic planning. SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Good question. Again, folks, don't let me go to another page without you absorbing what's in that page, because I've got 32 pages worth of material here that I would hope that you would continue to digest and to think about it, because so much of change, so much of personal growth is about a commitment to learning. And what I'm offering you is an opportunity to learn about some things in a way you may not have thought about them, and I hope it has value. So let's look at self-care with a little bit of a different eye. When you think about self-care, what is it? Anybody want to give me a sense of how you would describe self-care? I've got Benjamin typing. Thank you. How would you describe self-care? I always use the question, how would you describe self-care to my bright 13-year-old grandson? How would you describe self-care to a referee, which is the more potent influence? Taking time to play and relax. Yes, that's a part of it. Eating and sleeping well. Another part of it. Interesting. I'm going to talk to you about occupational science. And those first two that you offer, Jennifer, are what occupational science speaks to as being the process of self-care. Yoga and meditation. Putting the mask on me first. Yeah. And how do we achieve a healthy balance? How do we achieve a healthy balance that allows us to take care of ourselves? Because see, folks, another part of self-care is taking care of ourselves within the environments that we are taking care of ourselves and others in. And that in itself may take a different type of self-care, because many of those environments may not be as welcoming or as engaging or as helpful as we might want them to be. Spending time with hobbies that I enjoy, like hiking and photography. And think about where your sense of how to take care of yourself came about. And the question is, how's it working for you? Is it working well enough? Is it working to the point that you do experience a greater sense of energy, positivity when you're identifying these? Identify what's important to you. Yeah, much like meeting recoveries where they're at. What's important to you? What has heart and meaning for you in the realm of self-care is the best practice of self-care, I believe. Standing up for yourself. That's a part of the power circle as well. Standing up for myself. When I hear you say standing up for yourself, Jennifer, it reminds me of how many times, being a grandfather, I want to be there for my grandchildren, and yet there are times when I'm there for them and it takes away from what I need to do for myself. And I can get a little gritty and a little angry when that happens, and yet I need to stand up for myself, take care of myself. And those are things I have to remind myself and then push myself to do. Thank you, folks. Nice work. So what is self-care? Let's add to the science. How do you define or describe it? What are your attitudes about self-care? You ever think about that? What are your attitudes about self-care? We have a sense of how we might do self-care, but what are your attitudes related to self-care? What are your actions related to self-care? And what is your vision of taking care of yourself? Do you have one? Is it written somewhere? And is it a guide to your efforts to take care of yourself? And what is it responding to? And are the elements, the attitudes, and the actions of your self-care responding to what needs to be responded to? So many times we can hear somebody, I take care of myself by doing such and such and so and so, and we may pick that up as being what might be right for us, but it's not necessarily so. So the ability to have a clear vision of how you're going to take care of yourself always helps. 4 laws of change. Change must be preceded by a great vision. Change comes from within. So it is about you standing up for yourself. It is identifying what's most important for you. It is paying attention to what's heart and meaning for you. And most importantly, it's your willingness to follow through and get it done. And following that vision is a major piece of that work. Occupation and self-care. I've already, spoken a little bit about, I'm going to talk to you about occupational science because I think it has a great relevance to our work as recovery coaches. When I went to University of Connecticut School of Social Work and graduated in 1984, I did a lot of work with a woman named Carol Germain who taught me the ecological approach to social work practice. And what the ecological approach to social work practice simply is we pay attention to the person, the environment in which the person is making an honest effort to function, and their fit within that environment. I think much of what we're talking about today, when we talk about self-care in difficult times, really speaks to our fit within an environment. I went to Yale, graduated from Yale. However, my first couple of years at Yale, I didn't feel like I fit there. And much of my sense of not fitting there was because people told me that I didn't necessarily belong there because of the color of my skin, or the color of my skin gave them a sense that I was only there because I was affirmative action. And that was hard to sit with. So it was very difficult to be okay with who I was. So when we talk about occupation and self-care, again, you're going to get a different concept of what occupation is. Many times we think about occupation, we think about work. We think about a job. But I had 40 to 50 hospitalizations, and many of those at Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown, Connecticut. And I can remember the occupational therapist would come up to the unit and take a group of us downstairs and teach us how to make things. That was called occupational therapy. So I thought that's what it was. But when I started to think about recovery coaching, when I started to think about recovery coaching and helping the person with the best fit and environment, I was Googling images and the like, and I came up with this image that you'll see in a few minutes from the University of Southern California, which has a very powerful occupational therapy unit. Becoming educated, culturally competent, and trauma-informed. Yes. Yeah, and a lot of that is for myself, isn't it, Mark? Because, as I'm becoming more culturally competent and more culturally sensitive, and I'm starting to become more trauma-informed, basically related to many things that are going on. But those are occupations that we engage in that help us to take care of ourselves and help others. Again, question. So when you think about occupation and self-care, occupation is engagement in activities, tasks, and roles for the purpose of productive pursuit, maintaining oneself in the environment, and for purposes of relaxation, entertainment, creativity, and celebration. Many of those elements are in what you identify as being self-care. Occupation added to self-care says it's engagement. So in my engagement in tasks and activities and my role as a recovery coach is for the purposes of productive pursuit of successful recoveries. My engagement and activities and tasks in my role as a person in long-term recovery is for that productive pursuit of improving the quality of my life and well-being and participating well within the world and performing as well as I can. So I like this whole concept of what occupational therapy offers us. It also offers us, think about what are the activities, tasks, and roles that you are engaged in for the purpose of productive pursuit. And what is productive pursuit? What is productive pursuit? What are the activities, tasks, and roles you are engaged in for the purpose of relaxation, entertainment, creativity, and celebration? I like what you said about it can include recreating oneself. We call it recreating, but I like that concept, Mark. Recreating. We recreate ourselves through relaxation, entertainment, creativity, celebration, as we follow through on our active pursuit. When you talk about balance, this is what balance is about. How do I engage in the activities, roles, and tasks for the purpose of my productive pursuit, which is many times my work? And how do I, engage in activities, tasks, and roles for the purpose of recreating myself on weekends or recreating myself in my off time so that I can strengthen myself to continue to be creative and help others. So, for me, I spend the weekends chasing my grandchildren around Connecticut or in other parts of New England as they practice their sports. That for me is recreating myself. It's an opportunity for me to create myself based upon what's most important to me, and it's really that focus on caring. How well are you maintaining yourself in the environments in which you're engaged? So you're engaging in activity, tasks, and roles for the purpose of productive pursuit. You're engaging in activity, tasks, and roles for the purpose of relaxation, entertainment, creativity. And how are you maintaining yourself in practicing those things given the nature of the environments that you're trying to engage yourselves in, which more times than not we have minimal to no control over those environments. So they become a key piece of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And are you aware of how much they do impact who you are in the world? Occupation and self-care. Let's talk a little bit more about occupation. Occupations of self-care, one of my favorite diagrams. In the middle is self-care, and it shows you what are the things that we can do and be and practice in order to take care of ourselves. Creating a pie of activities one enjoys and reviewing the pie to access where one needs. I mean, you speak about it, Mark. This is my pie. This is me creating a series of activities based upon my ability to meet these criteria. And sometimes I do well, sometimes I don't do well. It's hard to keep up with all of it. Look at how much there is. But the critical pieces that are there are environment, as well as who I am, my self-esteem, my spirit, my life purpose. See, one of the things I want people to constantly look at, there's so much to take care of. I went for years and years and years, and I thought I was taking care of most of it. And then I found that there were pieces that were just not being taken as good a care as others. And so guess what? They called me out. If you look at this as a wheel and there's spokes on the wheel, if any one of these spokes is broken, the ride is bumpy. So many times we get an awareness that the ride is getting bumpy, an awareness that one of the spokes of the wheel of our self-care wheel is damaged. And do we pay attention to that? Do we pay attention to it as heart and meaning for ourselves, as well as we pay attention to it as heart and meaning for people that we try to help? Reflection time. Constant reflection, constantly looking at where I am, constantly discovering and managing myself. It's such an important reflecting activity. And I think reflection takes on an opportunity to document those reflections as well. Occupations of self-care. This is what I've tended to look at over time when I thought about how do I take, for example, how do you take care of your spirit? We take care of our spirit through our spiritual practices. How do you improve one's self-esteem? Many young people will ask me. So much of, how do we master stress? How do relationships fit into this whole concept of self-care? There's so much to take care of. No wonder we don't take care of all of it as well as we might want to. That's when you ask me how I'm doing, I say I'm doing well enough. I love the wheel as well, Linda. Yes, yes, yes. And you know what, Linda? I've come to believe and find that many times I'm neglecting parts because I don't know what I don't know. I'm not paying attention to all that there is to be paid attention to until sometimes it's a bit late. Sometimes it's a bit late. But yeah, these are the pieces that we can amass and we can bring together as we think about what self-care might look like for us. Yeah, I like that, piece at a time, and especially when I'm working with recoveries, it's time to take a piece at a time, and yet not losing sight of these pieces are interconnected in many ways, and especially when you bring the environment to bear, they're so interconnected. So as much as I might pay attention to small pieces, I'm also aware that those small pieces have an ability and an opportunity to affect all the pieces or many of the other pieces. This is a neat, when I talk about this, the source of this diagram, again, is University of Southern California, their occupational science research. And when I was brainstorming occupations, this came up. Recovery occupation supporting care. But think about it, this is a major part of our toolbox. The occupations that support recovery care are health and well-being, appreciation of the health disparities and cultural influences on health and recovery, ethics, society, and social justice, rehabilitation science, which is treatment, engagement, activity, and neuroscience, comorbidity, reintegration and social participation, family life. These are all elements of the work that recoveries do, and we support them to do. This is what recovery capital is made of. And even more importantly, this is what care is made of. Core concepts of recovery occupations that support care. I put this one in just to make some connections to what we do and how we do it. Oh yeah, nature steps in and gives us the truth and sets us a bit back if we pay attention. But again, paying attention to heart and meaning puts us in a position where we're open to when nature steps in or when things are out of our control. Okay. So I've talked about occupational science, and again, the concept of science and the science of coaching recovery. And for me, this is a part of my science of coaching recovery. This is a part of my science of coaching or helping people. It's occupational science. It's how daily activities affect our health and our well-being. If you look at many descriptions or definitions of recovery, many of them have improving the quality of health, quality of life, and well-being. So here, occupational science is how daily activities affect our health and well-being. Occupational science is the science of everyday living. It's an academic discipline that focuses on the benefits of productive, social, and physical activity called occupations in people's everyday lives. I find the real value here is to help people to think about, what are you doing to occupy your time? And doesn't that come up enough? How do I occupy my time? What do I do with myself? This helps people to at least appreciate that there are certain things that can be done that have the capacity to affect our health and well-being one way or another. It's critical. For me, Bernard, it's important to me as well. And what makes it most important to me is that I can't give away what I don't have. If I'm not taking care of myself, it's very difficult for me to offer people an opportunity to think about how they might do that for themselves. And in its importance to you, as you pay attention to the importance of self-care to you, I'm encouraging people to practice it. Just don't think about it. Practice it. Find a way to make it work for you. Occupational science is devoted to learning how engagement, activity in occupation can address global health concerns of the 21st century by promoting health, well-being, and quality of life across the lifespan. Isn't that what we're seeking to promote in recovery? Health, well-being, and quality of life improvement over the lifespan. It's about the recovery. It's not about me. It's their plan to improve the quality of their health, their well-being, and their lives. And I have a responsibility to do that as well in my own life. And for me, that's really what taking care of myself is about. It's being as healthy as I can be. It's practicing a sense of well-being as much as I can. And it's appreciating what the quality of my life is like and how that's working for me in my efforts to make it the best that I can make it. Occupational science, the science of everyday living. I love it. Because again, It's always been in the back of my head. Nobody ever taught me how to live. My mom didn't. She was too busy trying to survive. My dad didn't. He as well was trying to survive. There were no manuals that were written that gave us a sense of how to live. And even if those manuals are written, one manual doesn't fit everybody. So in many ways, what we're making an effort to do, at least I'm making an effort to do to this occupational science focus, is to understand, okay, what is a science of everyday living? And how might I develop an art based upon that science? And that's what I'm offering you an opportunity to think about and to do. I'm not giving you any solutions, but giving you a lot to think about. That's, for me, that's the most potent work that I can do. I get people to think about things that they don't necessarily think about. I really like that very basic question. What am I doing? Jennifer, that has evolved as a result of occupational science for me. Again, how are you occupying your time? How are you occupying your mind? So many times, how many people walk into recovery and the first thing that they think of, an occupation, is work. It's a way to occupy their time. A way to occupy their time is visiting recovery community centers. A way to occupy one's mind is to sit in one's room and ruminate and be depressed over what I've not done with my life to that point. What am I doing to occupy my time is critical. So if you recall the stages of recovery, all of the tasks and the activities in the stages of recovery can be identified as being occupations of recovery, tasks of recovery. For example, in stage 1, we talk about managing anxiety. How do I occupy my time in managing my anxiety? Time is a very resource we all have the same of and access to, and how we choose to utilize it is how we choose to utilize it. Choice is always theirs, isn't it? And we help them to appreciate what those choices are. And I think occupational science offers an opportunity to think about, how am I going to live one day at a time? Living one day at a time and practicing the occupations that offer one the opportunity and the satisfaction of living one day at a time is a powerful tool. I like this diagram. Occupational therapy aims to help people complete the functions of everyday life. However, occupation is not just your chosen career. An occupation is any activity performed by an individual that might be self-care, i.e. eating, bathing, sleeping, that might be productivity, i.e. working or school, or that might be leisure, socializing, recreation, and enjoyment. I think this is where the tide comes back into play and help them to access where they are and what their needs to do next. Yeah, when you talk about that pie, Mark, I also use the pie. I also use that self-care image that we just saw with about 10 activities and occupations of self-care. I utilize that image right up front to have recoveries prioritize the occupations in that circle. And I think at some level, I think that's what I'm hearing you say. The pie comes into play in helping people to assess, i.e. prioritize where they are and make a priority of where they might want to go. That really helps us to be about them versus about me. So you see that diagram comes into play real well. When you look at self-care, productivity, and leisure, that's where the balance has to come. I work, I go to school, I recreate myself, I socialize, I give to myself in a way that's not working or going to school. And in that process, I'm taking care of myself. How well are you balancing those three primary points of occupational therapy? And I hope you're making the connection. Occupational therapy focuses on my ability to take care of myself, my ability to be productive, and my ability to recreate myself through leisure. That's the balance. And if I can achieve that balance, then I'm achieving something that's really speaking to taking care of me, as well as the other aspects of my living. A little bit of a summarization. Occupational therapy, it talks about leisure, productivity, and self-care. Teasing out self-care a little bit. And again, as, it fits. It fits recovery. It fits what, some of the, yes, yes. Personal care is a part of self-care. I eat, I shower, I take medication. Home maintenance is a part of self-care. Clothing, cleaning, household maintenance, shopping, money management, health management. So many times health management comes under recovery, but health management is also emotional, physical, social, vocational health aspects. Productivity is employment, school, homemaking, parenting. Parenting is a productivity aspect. Leisure, sports, music, reading, rest, relaxation, meditation, sleeping. Self-care. Thank you, Mark, as well. Self-care. Another way to look at it. As I'm practicing leisure, as I'm practicing being productive, I'm also finding a way to practice as a way of balancing my self-care. Image of occupational science and what it offers. Much like the three-legged stool, this is a wonderful summarization. The words I've teased out a bit, and I can make them more simple in other diagrams that I've developed, but I think the overall picture, again, this is from the University of Southern California Occupational Science research. They talk about, think about it this way. You got on the left-hand side the person, i.e. the intrinsic factors of who we are as an individual. Physiological, cognitive, spiritual, neurobehavioral, and psychological all come to play in our well-being. If physiologically, meaning our body movement, if our thinking is off, if our ability to nurture our spirit is not happening, our psychological is off, our well-being is lessened. Quality of life speaks to the environmental factors that come into play. So I've got a person who's practicing and making an effort to practice well-being, and so much of their well-being, as well as their quality of life, is based upon what they get in their environment. Environment offers us social support, social and economic systems that help us in our processes, culture and values, built environment, technology, a natural environment. And these all come into play and determine how we occupy our time, how we perform as we occupy our time. I mean, what we do and how well we do it. And then the overlap of those two circles is occupational performance and participation. How many times do we encourage people in early recovery to participate, to perform tasks? But so much of that is incumbent upon their sense of who they are as a person and their sense of the environment to receive them as they are. Is that person making an effort to get? How about us peers get together and do bowling or playing a disco for peers? Yeah. I mean, it's so collaborative. I mean, the person in the environment is so critically collaborative. Whether it's a 12-step fellowship, it's a church fellowship, it's a recovery community center, we need each other. For my self-supervision, I utilize an outside therapist in addition to supervision I receive daily. I need a non-biased point of view. Excellent. Excellent. And bring your point of view to that conversation. Bring your point of view. But I clearly, just as I believe, just as sponsors have sponsors, coaches deserve coaches to help us along the way so that we can help others as well. And hopefully it's a non-judgmental, unbiased support. But if you look at that, the coaches coaching coaches comes under that quality of life piece, support. And again, when I asked the questions earlier, think about you as a person with intrinsic, meaning factors that are inside of you, and also dealing with an environment that has its own factors that may or may not be clashing with your own. Self and environments. I offer this because this is another, I love these diagrams are so almost great. Think about this I'm setting up a picture of a person in an environment. You've got on the left-hand upper quadrant, you've got psychological and spiritual, the inner individual. On the right-hand upper quadrant, you have the outer individual, which is physical environment and their behaviors within that environment. On the left-hand bottom, there's the inner collective, which really speaks about culture. And on the outer collective, there are natural systems and social systems in which people are trying to get their needs met. This encaptures self and environments. The name of this particular, it's about community. They call it it talks about an integral community, and it just shows that the pieces come together. I break it down to give you a better picture of it, but also, and this is where the rubber hits the road, folks. This is the work that I'm encouraging you to do as you think about taking care of self in difficult times, because many times these difficult times are a result of people, places, and things in the environments in which we live that impact who we are. And you'll get an example of that from my own examples. So remember this diagram because I'm going to break it down. The inner individual, physical, psychological, and spiritual, that speaks to awareness, thought, feeling, attitudes, values, beliefs, intentions, inner health and well-being, self-esteem, sense of safety, trust, sense of connectedness, responsibility, and caring for others in the environment, creativity, innovation, artistic expression. And the key one that keeps coming up is motivation and experience of participation and contribution. Recovery Coach Academy, when you ask people why they're there, I'm here to give back. Motivation to experience and participate and contribute. Yes, coaches need coaches. We need a database of Recovery Coaches Network. I agree. Let's go for it. So the individual, so what do I want you to think about? Given who you are as the inner individual, your psychological and your spiritual dimensions, absorb that image, absorb those concepts, and then think about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are the threats that you experience in taking care of your inner self? Do you pay attention to this inner stuff? And in paying attention to it, are you able to discover it and manage it well? So with that in mind, give you an opportunity to SWOT it. That's a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis asks you to identify what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are your threats. In this particular SWOT analysis, we're asking you to think about what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in taking care of your inner self. You know, for me, the real cool piece of this is when I help recovery to identify their strengths and their weaknesses. Of course, we come up with more weaknesses than strengths. And many times we come up with more threats than opportunities. But the visualization of a SWOT analysis offers a person to look at their weaknesses and have discussions and conversations that matter and discover occupations of daily living that help them to take those weaknesses and maybe build them into strengths. Give you a good example of that. We perceive it as a weakness many times when people are coming in early recovery to be a manipulator. However, the same skills that I use to manipulate, I can use to negotiate. So if I'm a good manipulator, I can build into a strength of being a good negotiator. Another opportunity is to look at the threats that might be to my taking care of my inner self, and how do I take those threats and make them into opportunities. You know, that's the beauty and the value of strategic planning, which is where SWOT analysis comes from. You look at your weaknesses and how do you build them into strengths, and you look at your threats and how do you build them into opportunities. It's always about taking care of self in the midst of whatever is going on with me, environmentally or internally. What challenges, stresses, energizes, deflates, frustrates, or angers you when you experience your inner self? I'll give you an example of what that's been for me. They come from the lessons of Racism and Well-Intended. The first two bolded lessons that I've learned in Racism and Well-Intended is the stress of racism and care for racism. And care for racism has really informed a lot of the talking that I'm doing today in looking at how do I take care of myself in difficult times. Difficult times have been my ability to find a way to take care of me in the midst of experiencing racial inequities, racism, and all that entails. I've done almost 25 years in looking at racism and its effect on my own self and my identity. And that's where this work comes from. I'm going to give you pieces of it just to give you some examples of my stuff related to moving through. I call it the stress of racism. I had to admit that I was powerless over racism, creating unmanageability and toxic relating in my life. That inner individual that we talked about earlier, that's that personal dis-ease that I experienced. It was a systematic, toxic, restricting experiences that were supporting shame. How is that shame support? See the image there? That goes with that there. I mean, there's that brown egg in a basket of non-brown eggs trying to live. So my inner individual was constantly affected by what I experienced as being systematic, toxic, restricting experiences that were supporting my shame. What was my shame? I was told that I wasn't good enough because of how I looked and what I looked like. The stress of racism. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats in taking care of your outer self? This goes to another part of the circle we're just looking at. Your outer self speaks to physical and behavioral, physical health and well-being, your skills and your abilities, your activities, your participation in programs in your living, your consumer behaviors, your diet and fitness, actions that you take towards others in the environment. Again, your skills and your opportunities for participation and contribution. It all spills to your ability to participate and to contribute, and that speaks of occupational science work. So again, you get to do a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats in taking care of your outer self? Your outer self stuff is that stuff. Oops. Your outer self stuff is that stuff. Your physical well-being stuff. Your physical and behavioral stuff that you're working on and working through as you move through life. What challenges, stresses, energizes, deflates, and frustrates or angers you in engaging in yourself? Again, an example from Racism of the Well-Intended. Again, this is the outer individual, the physical and the behavioral. This was my experience. The stress of racism. As the outer individual, it was an interpersonal dis-ease. I use the acronym for racism as relationships affected by color, intolerance, stereotypes, and misunderstanding. It spoke to a lot of isms. Everybody seemed to label and put up isms. That outer individual, as I tried to be in the world, there was a sense of interpersonal dis-ease. Those were difficult times to live through. This was the stuff that I lived through going to private school, Yale, and eventually drinking myself out of law school because of the stress that made me feel as if I was not valuable and worthwhile because of the color. People made assumptions and people made judgments about me based on the color of my skin. That was an environment that was very toxic for me. And it had to be resolved and lived through. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in taking care of your cultural engagements? And again, culture is multidimensional, folks. When you honestly look at it, you belong to several cultures. Culture is about worldviews, shared meaning, collective norms and ethics, shared attitudes, values, and beliefs, shared vision and goals, myths and the like, co-creativity, culture of participation and contribution. So much of what I experience in the world today, in my community today, in my environments today, is the challenge of being able to participate and contribute at the level that I would like to. And think about people who have that same problem. Sometimes as a result of problems and choices we've made for ourselves, but many other times based upon people not giving a damn about who I am or what I bring to the table. Very difficult to live that way. It's our ongoing existence. One begins to feel as if one is not valuable or worthy. Very difficult. Great information, and what an excellent way to file away. Because it's still, yeah, I've been doing this work for 30-odd years. Is co-creativity like collaboration? I think it is. I think collaboration is an opportunity to practice developing mutually creative solutions. I like that. I mean, for me, I learn collaboratively very well because it puts me in a position to not be the expert. It puts me in a position to treat the people around me as resources, and hopefully they treat me as well as a resource. And clearly, it's an opportunity for change that we can all embrace well enough. Shared decision making, or shared choice making, or shared discoveries. I love collaboration. Collaborative work is critical work. Let me get through this. There's your SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and taking care of your cross-cultural engagements. We talk about cultural competence. We talk about cultural sensitivity. This speaks to what are your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities when you are connecting with cultures that are not the same as your own. And again, the ability to do that is the ability to reduce some of the stress. What challenges or energizes or deflates or frustrates you or angers you in engaging in diverse cultures? Stress or racism, culture of fear. I experience. Look, there's a whole bunch of black ducks being chastised by a yellow duck. A culture of fear, dysfunctional relating, emotional immaturity, non-collaboration, insanity, anxiety, and lack. Someone asked about collaboration. I think when we don't collaborate, we sink. When we don't collaborate, we hurt each other. We fear each other. We misunderstand each other. We don't work together with each other. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats in taking care of your systems engagement? Think about systems engagement, folks. That's where we help recoveries to engage in the process of gathering recovery capital. That's where we engage in our own recovery capital. We get what we need from our natural environments and our ecological systems, all to the point of systems and structures that we hope will allow us to participate and contribute. I mean, it's so much a part of who we are. It's that outer collective that many times is being restricted in the days that we're living in today. SWOT analysis, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in taking care of your systems engagement? How well are you engaging in the systems that meet the needs of the people that you care about? How well are you engaging in the systems that meet your own needs? And what are some of the restrictions to your engagement in those systems? That's a part of self-care, folks. Because self-care's ability to reduce stress is self-care's ability to be what it needs to be. What stresses or challenges or energize, deflates, or frustrates you in engaging in social systems? We talk about social systems for structures and participation contribution. Stress or racism, that final quadrant. You see a circle of people united in blue and a person left out of that circle, that outer collective. It's systems malpractices, discrimination, enabling, non-compliance with laws and rules, inconsistency, apathy, and limitations. Those are all experienced by me as I had to move through this politics over racism that created unmanageability and toxic relating. And I can't not move on or finish this out with helping you appreciate what this has all meant for me. I've taken those quadrants and I found ways to take care of myself or to take care of those quadrants. That's a part of my self-care. I practice self-care in my inner individual by practicing care matters. My physical self, my spiritual self, my social self, my emotional self, my intellectual self, and my occupational self must be taken care of. Enjoy, Brian. Thanks for being here. Really, thanks for being here. Interpersonal care. Collaboration, that word again, folks. Allies, respect, empowerment. A culture of care versus a culture of fear that we saw earlier. It's a common spirit, a common goal, a way of living together, regard for all, and enthusiasm inspiring. And systems of care that care. Communication, accountability, responsibility, and equality. A way of living, self-care. I'm not going to go all through the dimensions, but the goal is to feel vital and balanced, free from depression and anxiety. And we get that through physical self-care, our lifestyle, spiritual self-care, people support, mental, emotional self-care. This diagram was used more of a specific just to get you to think about, okay, what are some things I can do to live self-care? And I'm not suggesting anything, but how do you begin to develop some art of developing your own self-care based upon what I hope is a science that I'm offering you today? Got a couple of minutes. Any time for questions, thoughts? I enjoyed this, folks, and I was happy to see as many people as I saw. I hope it helped you. I teach best what I most need to learn. And this has been very helpful for me because I continue to try to learn about taking care of myself, especially when I thought, you get the sense that you do the hard work of trying to do what you need to do, and it still is much to do. But the joy is that I'm willing to take responsibility for my act and doing what I can do. Thank you, Margaret. Good to hear from you. Good to hear from you, folks. I mean, please come back. I'll be back next month. And again, any suggestions you have for ongoing webinars, let us know. And Stacy and I will work on it. Thank you, Ashley. It takes a big paradigm shift. And the greatest paradigm shift is from intentional learning. So from incidental learning to intentional learning. I have to intend to learn. I must be open to learning to make change. And it's also a shift from treating people as objects to resources. The diagrams can be accessed by, as I understand, getting a subscription to the webinars. And again, your subscription to the webinars will introduce you to at least a couple years of webinars we've already done. There is a certificate for completion for people who are registered for the webinar. Check this stuff out with CART, please. Thank you, Ashley. I hope, again, folks, enjoy your day. I hope this helps. And the key for me is that I'm making an honest effort to practice what I'm teaching. Take care.